Resource allocation is one of the most critical responsibilities of the Planning Council. It is a deliberate, data-driven process that determines how limited Ryan White Part A funds are distributed across eligible services in the Denver TGA. So that's Adams, Arapahoe, Broomfield, Denver, Douglas, and Jefferson counties. To lessen the chance of bias, each service is funded by category and not by the agency providing the service. Instead of dollar amounts, the Council focuses on funding percentages for each category. Assigning percentages makes a lot of sense because the final award will not be announced when the Council meets for resource allocations.
Yes, that does make sense, and that's typical.
Yep, that's the normal for the PC.
Been that way for years. We will also talk about creating different sets of contingency allocations and other considerations so every dollar will have the greatest positive impact for people living with HIV.
Yikes. Contingency allocations and other considerations is a bit freaky to think about.
Yeah, it is for sure, but the Council will step up during this challenging time.
Absolutely. We will cover that in a few minutes. But first,
The image you are seeing represents 100% of the Ryan White Part A service dollars for 2025.
we will start with the highest ranked service category and move down the list.
Here we see that Outpatient Ambulatory Health Services, or OAHS, which was ranked as the top priority, received an allocation of 25%, followed by Psychosocial Support Services, PSS, the second highest prioritized category, that received 4.5%. Next, we have the AIDS Drugs Assistance Program, or ADAP, that is funded by Ryan White Part B. This is a good example of a category that is vital to people living with HIV, but does not receive a Part A funding allocation by the Planning Council. Here are some reasons why a prioritized service category would not be funded by Part A.
A prioritized service category may not be funded if some categories are funded elsewhere. Some services are funded by other sources, like another part of Ryan White, or by Medicaid and Medicare. Some categories have elements that are covered in other funded Part A services per the standards of care. Just as a reminder, the service standards are reviewed and maintained in the Planning Council's Service Standard Committee. Some categories don't have the impact they used to. They may have in the past, but less so in the current HIV landscape. Or they may not be actionable locally and not feasible in the Denver TGA. Some service categories are prioritized for funding flexibility. Having them on the list reserves them for emergency or backfill funding if needed. Service categories that are not funded by Ryan White go here, and we see that ADAP is prioritized and has a 0% funding allocation. Remember when we were talking about how the need of services have evolved over the course of the HIV epidemic? In Colorado, Ryan White Part B updated the name AIDS Drugs Assistance Program to the State Drug Assistance Program. Removing the word AIDS acts as a reminder that we are not in the same place we were, and that together we are moving forward without the stigmatizing references to AIDS. Next up, we have the health insurance premium and cost sharing category, which is also funded by Ryan White Part B.
The next is Oral Health Care, or OHC, a core medical service ranked at number 4 and given a 14% funding allocation. And the next two are support categories that are funded by Ryan White Part A and Part B. The first being housing services. That was set at number 5 during priorities. It received a 5.87% Part A allocation. And going in at 6 in priority is emergency financial assistance, commonly referred to as EFA, that was funded at 5.86. Then we have the case management continuum, listed here as CMC. This includes 4 service categories that are linked together, so they receive the same priority setting, coming in at number 7.
Yeah. And those continuum categories include medical case management, which is a core medical service, and then 3 support service categories: non-medical case management, health education and risk reduction, and referral to services.
Yes, So those categories are the case management continuum and received a 26.33% funding allocation by the Planning Council. Next, with the eighth priority setting, is Early Intervention Services, or EIS. It's a 4% funding allocation. And that is followed by Medical Transportation Service, or MTS, with a 2.13% allocation. At last year's priority setting and resource allocation meetings, Mental Health Services, that's listed here as MHS, was set at a 10th priority ranking with 4% for funding, and Substance Abuse Services, listed here as SAO, was ranked at number 11, given a 3.17% funding allocation. Next, at the number 12 priority, is Food Bank Home-Delivered Meals, that was allocated with 4%. And the last prioritized service category that has an allocation is Other Professional Services, which recently began to receive funding. For fiscal year 2025, it received 0.64% in allocated funds. This year, the Planning Council will decide if this category should continue receiving funds or if those Ryan White Part A dollars would be more useful somewhere else. The remaining categories were prioritized but did not receive an allocation. Keep in mind that these categories may be able to receive funding if the need should arise. And these will be in order of priority ranking, starting at number 14th, with Child Support Services, Linguistic Services, also seen here as LS. Then Home and Community Health Services, or HCHS, then Home Health Care, or HH, and then Hospice Services, or HS. Here is Medical Nutrition Therapy, ranked at 19, followed by Outreach Services at 20. And then there's Permanency Planning at 21, Rehabilitation Services at 22, and Respite Care Services at number 23. And we have Residential Substance Abuse Services completing the list, ranking 24th.
That is quite a list.
Yes, and if I may interject here.
Sure, what you got?
Thanks. While it is easy to refer to the priority setting ranking and resource funding allocations as a list, let's remember that these decisions are not made lightly. All of the parts of how each category can be actualized and funded are complex, and in the case of the Denver HIV Planning Council, this list reflects many years of consideration, robust conversation, and evaluation.
Yes, absolutely.
And ultimately, we are talking about people here, and the essential support that Ryan White Part A services may be able to provide.
That's right.
So true. Now let's talk about something that feels new to the Planning Council: allocation contingency plans. To enhance the flexibility of Ryan White service dollars in the face of potential federal funding cuts or rising needs due to reductions in other programs, the Planning Council is preparing for real possibilities in unpredictable times. To stay ready, the Planning Council will create 3 contingency allocation plans. Each version will set the funding allocations based on thresholds of the Ryan White Award when compared to fiscal year 2025. Alongside these, the Planning Council may adopt funding response measures, guidelines that activate when funding drops below certain levels. But first, let's start with contingency allocation plans. The first set of allocations will be based on the range of at least 95% up to 100% of the expected award. This set will provide Planning Council membership with a starting point when considering the changes that may have to happen if the award is smaller than expected. The next set may involve some hard choices if the Denver TGA receives an award with a threshold of 94%, down to 80% of the award received for 2025. You may be thinking that a threshold of 80 to 94% is a pretty big step. And yes, it is. But there are additional rules that may be applied to the overall allocations that will allow the Planning Council to have direct involvement in funding decisions, be responsive to any unforeseen changes in funding, and support emergent needs of the HIV community. We can get to those in a bit.
Though, can we do that now? I think it would be super helpful when thinking about these big allocation contingencies. What do you think?
Well, sure, that works. Good call.
Thanks.
Funding response measures are rules that kick in when a specific circumstance occurs that gives the Planning Council the ability to be agile and support the grantor and agencies to keep Ryan White service dollars flowing to support people living with HIV. For example, if funding drops below certain levels, a funding response measure may be: if the final award is 15% or more below expectations, any support category funded at 2% or less will not receive funds. Those resources will instead be redirected to the top 3 prioritized, currently funded categories. Another example would be if agencies indicate that they are no longer able to support a specific service category at a specified dollar amount, the Planning Council approves the efforts of DHR to redirect those allocated funds to applicable services that the agency may provide. There is an expectation that any redirection of funds be reported via email to the Planning Council. Again, this measure is not allowed broadly, but is governed in specific circumstances. The goal is to keep funds available and not locked up while other services may be compromised due to higher demand. One final example.
And let's remember, these are all just examples at this point.
Absolutely. This example would be something like: the Planning Council supports the release of reserved dollars for the Oral Health Fund, which sets aside a percentage of dollars for services that are higher in cost to meet the needs and better support the services that the oral health service category provides. This measure will be allowed if the funding allocation for the OHS category falls below 8% of funds available in the previous year.
Yee wowza, this whole thing is giving me cramps.
Same.
Yes, but I totally get it.
And while these are tough choices, they are absolutely necessary. The more prepared and knowledgeable the Planning Council is about what goes into all of these decisions, and even the process itself, will create a foundation from which to gain our footing in the months ahead. This makes being a member of the Denver HIV Resources Planning Council incredibly important.
Agreed, absolutely.
So, shall we wrap up with the final allocation contingency?
Yes, let's do it.
Alrighty then, here we go. The second contingency plan is even more drastic. This plan is activated at a threshold of 79% of the Ryan White Part A award for fiscal year 2025, down to just 70%. This set of allocations, when paired with funding measures, will most likely have drastic reductions for previously funded support and even core service categories, as the Council makes the difficult choice to preserve the essential services that will give people living with HIV the literal life support they need.
This video has presented recommendations to get Council members thinking critically. The percentages, plans, and measures shown are suggestions, not final decisions. In this pivotal time of uncertainty, it's the Council members who steer the course. As a Council, you may decide that multiple contingency allocations are needed, or you may choose to lean on funding response measures and keep allocation percentages the same. These decisions, guided by solid data and key information, will shape meaningful discussion and smart action.
Take time to review the information posted here and any materials shared with you. Study independently to understand the basics, then build on that knowledge to craft solutions of your own. Remember to reach out to your council buddy or to the council co-chairs, Paige, Carrie, and Michael, if you need support. Denver HIV Resources staff are also available. Finally, Philip and Ricardo hold open office hours to help you find data, answer questions, and back your decisions every step of the way. The work you do beforehand will make the PSRA process smoother, stronger, and more effective.
And please keep your eye out for important emails and notices about the data training priority setting meeting, and just a week after that is the big day for resource allocations. Which reminds me, if you have any data questions or ideas, reach out to Philip or Ricardo, or click on the red button that says, "Do you have a data request?" on the Council's website. Review the upcoming dates for the data trainings. Remember that all Council members must attend at least one of the 3 that are offered. You can, of course, show up to all 3. And check the Planning Council calendar on the website and be sure to attend your designated committees, trainings, and the PSRA. Now is the time for your dedication, knowledge, and to make your vote count. Thank you for being a council member. It is a generous act of service to the Denver metro area. Take care.